Hello guys, this is Mike Azevedo and today I'm bringing you a sketch using SketchBook Pro. So Autodesk invited me to test the program and have fun and go crazy. So this is what I'm doing right now. So this is a sketch that took me about 3 hours or 3.5 hours, and it's sped up to like 30 minutes, so it's really fast. I don't draw this fast. One thing I wanted to mention that I did some prep sketches, as you can see here. I wanted to paint a giant and a knight, a sort of like a frost giant facing a knight. So I had a previous idea before I started doing this. It's not like going completely crazy. It's almost completely crazy. And I wanted to to have a clear idea of what I wanted to do before I started doing it. And today, you can see right now that I'm using a steady stroke, which is that blue thing that was highlighted a while ago. You can see that that helps me a lot using sort of like very angular and very, you can see I'm using right now, very angular strokes and very angular lines. And it's good to use that at the beginning. I was testing it and I really enjoyed it because it gives me very strong lines to find sort of like the energy of the image before I start rendering and detailing. So I'm testing two options right now. I'm testing doing it a little night. So I didn't like it and I wanted to just draw a wolf. I really like animals. Animals are awesome. So right now I'm drawing the wolf. I really wanted to make it into sort of like shapes, not really into an actual wolf, but something you perceive as a wolf. Because I didn't want to make a super realistic sketch. I wanted to have it sort of like very stylized and very angular and very exaggerated. One thing I wanted to focus as well is that this is at this stage I'm doing more like a map than anything else. The drawing I'm doing right now I treat it as a map because I it's something to follow, but not necessarily something that you have to follow precisely. So some structure, some ideas and exploration of different kinds of design elements to the dude, to the dude's head, the giant's head, and I'm testing a lot of things, and I treat that as a map, something that to guide me later, because I know that if I do this without a guide, I would probably get lost, like using a map, right? So this helps me a lot. And one thing I really try to focus on this stage is explaining things in the quickest way but correctly. Like the way you explain how to get to somewhere to someone. It's really just focusing on explaining it quickly in the clearest way of having it uh, explained. One thing as well that I'm doing right this at this moment is I'm trying to focus on smaller details, but not too much. I'm just using details on the main focal areas like the face and the hands. I'm describing it a little bit better. I'm not sure if I can call this a detail. I'm just describing it a little better so you can see that some of the face is more defined, some of the hand, but the rest is pretty loose. I'm trying to solve as many structural issues as I can right now before I go into painting because I know that I'm testing this program out, right? I know that I'm gonna go crazy with the brushes and just gonna go insane with the different kinds of brushes and different kinds of tools, and I really wanted to have some direction before I lose myself. So you can see that I wanted to portray the first time that the wolf saw the giant, and I really wanted to show you how to how this moment feels in time. I really wanted to just focus on that. Those bushes that I did, they really helped me with scale and depth. Doing repetition really helps you to add more depth into your image, like trees or rocks or anything on environments that repeats itself and goes towards the background really helps. You can see that I'm defining some things with a different kind of brush right now, a clearer brush, because I didn't want to lose the main structure. I wanted to make it clear before I move to the next stage. And until this point, I'm really trying to avoid thinking about other things, that's values and colors and all those things. And right now you can see that I'm starting to add the colors. So I'm using the designer brushes. I'm basically testing it out. I had like a half an hour to test the brushes before, but it's not really enough time to get to know it well. So at this point as well, I'm really trying to explore. You can see that the lasso tool, which is something that I, as a Photoshop user, a long time Photoshop user, am very familiar with, and it helps me a lot in Photoshop. So it's great to have it here as well. And it's really one of the great benefits of digital painting is that you can edit it later and you can control it better than traditional. But what I really liked about Sketchbook Pro is that you have some sort of randomness to it. You have some sort of chaos, which is something that traditional brings a lot to the table, a lot of times. So I'm trying to combine the use of lasso tool with different kind of brushes. You can see that I'm switching the brushes a lot, focusing on having a big read on the shapes. So I'm using the lasso tool and like filling it with a big brush. You can see on the wolf, and everything is being transformed into shapes. This wolf is not actually a wolf for me, it's a big shape of value. And this is using a bit of broken colors, which is some hue variations and some different kinds of brush strokes to add sort of like the noise of the snow, because if you actually look at it closely, it's not just pure white. You can have some sort of light reflections on it. So I'm using a color dodge layer to add a lot of reflections because snow is very reflexive, and to really play with colors and different kinds of randomness to it. And you can see that I've just added a big soft dark shape to the top of the image, and I'm playing with some gradients. I really enjoy the gradients on Sketchbook Pro. It's really easy to control and it's a lot of fun. It's much more control that I'm used to, which is awesome. And right now I'm testing to use a lasso tool on this guy to have him on a very clear shape read, and I'm playing with different kinds of brushes, so you can have maybe a cape on this guy, but I didn't really like the cape. I was not doing it properly, so you can see that I erased it, and I tested doing oh, this is really cool, which is like the ruler. It works pretty much as a ruler. It's really intuitive, and that's something I really enjoyed about this. Is it's really intuitive. I blocked out the shapes on the wolf, and now I'm doing a shadow pass on it, which is I locked the layer on the wolf, and I'm just focusing on clear shadow shapes to the wolf, and I'm not trying to make it complex, trying to render it a lot and make transitions. I'm trying to have it like very geometric and very clear read on it. And at all times I have my sketchbook by my side to remind myself what is the basic read I'm going for. It's really easy when you're painting digitally to forget what you're going for and forget the story, just use details and color dodge layers and start brightening things up. And I'm really focusing on not forgetting about that. It's really important for me in my process. So sometimes I'm doing smaller shapes, sometimes I'm adding snow to things, making things smaller, but I'm always trying to remember the basic read I had when I started the image and the basic story that I wanted to say. And it really doesn't matter how clear the idea is in your head, it has to be clear for other people, right? So making it clear to other people is key for me in a painting. And you can see that I deleted I made the layer invisible, the line layer that I had on the wolf and the guy, and it pretty much stays the same. Right now I don't need my map anymore. I got to where I wanted on that area, so I don't need a map. And you can see that I'm trying to do the same on the giant right now. I'm focusing on having just big lasso shapes and just knowing some different areas. So I wanted the skin to be blue and the beard to be sort of like ice, a big ice beard for this guy. And I'm blocking out the colors and the shapes, but I don't want the colors to be super crazy on this guy because I want him to stay on the back. And again, it's easy to go too far and to add too much contrast, too much details, and just color dodge things basically. But I really want him to stay on the back. Uh, I just want the hand maybe to be forward at this point. I'm exploring it. I'm not sure if I'm gonna make him completely disappear into the background or make him a little popped out. And right now I'm carving out the shapes using lasso tool and a synthetic brush, and it's really cool because it just brings a lot of traditional feel to the digital painting, which is something I really enjoy. And the way I paint is, in a way, very traditional. I don't really use any fancy tools, just brush strokes that look like things, basically. So one thing that it's really nice about this is that I'm able to zoom out and zoom in very easily. The program is very light, so it doesn't take any time to load at all. It loads in like 2 seconds, which is crazy, or maybe like 1 second. And that really allows me to focus on what's important, which in this case is sculpting the form on the head. I'm painting basically the planes of the head. I'm really not doing anything else. I'm just focusing on how the planes interact with the light, and that's basically it. And you can see that I'm starting to make the line layer not visible, and it starts to read a little bit, but not the way I want. Right now I'm also testing a little bit of scaling the wolf. The scaling mechanism on Sketchbook Pro is also really cool. The zoom is really nice as well. And I just upped the res on the program right now on my image, so I can work on finer details and start using angular brushes. And this is a trick I use a lot. I start with a very low res or a kind of a low res image, sort of like maybe 1,000 for 2,000 pixels, and then in the middle I up the res maybe to like 3,000 or 4, maybe more if the client asks for it. And right now I just found the perfect brush, which is the synthetic coarse angular brush. It's beautiful. It's perfect because it's very angular and it's very geometric. You can see that it's sort of like a square brush, but it really allows me to carve out the forms and really work on planes, which is something I really do a lot when I'm painting. I focus a lot on planes and carving out the forms using planes. You can see that I'm using darker shadows to carve out the deepest parts of form and the interaction between two shapes. And this really allows me to work like a traditional sculptor in a lot of ways. The way I paint is a lot like a sculptor would, I think. I don't really sculpt, so I could be lying like hell right now, but I think so. And as I zoom out, you can see that all the entire area of the monster and the background is in a way a darker underpaint. So it's like softer and it's darker. And right now, what I'm doing is I'm testing out doing the hand in a more opaque way and then a much brighter value than the rest. So it just pops out and it really just sticks out of the painting. And the contrast between the opaque hand and the softer and less opaque rest of the monster is gonna really feel like the hand is popping forward. And I will spend some time on this hand. You'll see that I'll erase a lot of times and try to get the hand right, because it's really the most important part of this painting, or one of the most important parts. And if I don't feel like it's correct, I'll just erase and do it again. Maybe I'll just erase everything or just start over. I'm testing out lighting in the entire hand, but I'm really not sure about it. So I just delete some areas and focus on the big read of the hand. So you can see that I'm painting it from afar, and it's really just the overall shape. And just when I think it's right, I realize I have a mistake and I have to do it again and redo a lot of the parts of the hand. And I really didn't want to edit this part out, because my process is a lot like this. I could easily have just sped up things or cut the video, but it wouldn't really show what my process is like, because I make a lot of mistakes. And those mistakes are part of the process. It's like sketching is not making everything perfect, but is making the best you can and fixing the mistakes as you see them, and maybe incorporating the mistakes into the final result. And that's really what sketching is about for me. When I started painting, I remember that I was really frustrated, because I always see the final result of other artists, and I see the impressive results and the very great paintings, but we all see everything that we do wrong. We all see the mistakes that we do, the entire process. We see our entire process, but we don't see the mistakes of others, and that's really frustrating as an artist. And one thing that could really help is show that really doesn't matter. You will always make mistakes, and you have to live with that. You have to embrace that, and you have to just try to make it better the next time, and not really cry a lot on one mistake specifically, but really try to make the best you can and enjoy your painting. Just have fun with it. And that's not easy or something that always works, but it's something I'm always trying to work towards, and I'm always trying to go for, is having fun and doing my best. And you can see that going back to the painting side, I pretty much have the values correctly, and from now on, the painting is not gonna change much, like in value and color. I'm just gonna add tiny details and tiny forms to it, but the overall form is gonna stay the same, which is what I intended with the thumbnail I did on my sketchbook. It was what I'm striving for and what I got to at this stage. A lot of the times I just stop at this area, but I think that adding details sometimes can help a lot to improve the storytelling aspect of it, and to improve some of the focal points. And it's something I've been working on to add more details to things, and it's a lot of fun. I'm using the glow layer to add this tiny exaggeration of light to this background, and it's really cool. I really like the name of the layer, just glow, and it glows. It's really easy to use. I'm using that right now to add some more focus to the wolf, and I didn't really want to make the wolf super strong in the composition, but I did want to make him pop out a little bit. So I'm using a little bit of a dark background over there, um, sort of like a tiny snow mountain, to pop up the form of the wolf a little, and I'll add more things to that later. I'm adding some snow that formed on this dude over the years that he was maybe frozen, and I'm testing a lot of the synthetic paint brushes and using a large soft brush, basically to uh, have some sort of different textures to the things in my painting. Some things are way softer and smoother, and some things are they have a lot of texture to it, and I really like that. Not using only one kind of texture to your painting, everything's soft or everything's textured. I like to have variations on that. That is something that I have a lot of fun with. Right now I'm using a multiply layer to emphasize the forms on the dude. You can see that sometimes I zoom out crazy amounts, and I'm really sorry about that, but it's the first time I'm using this program. And um, you can see that I just erased the eyes on the multiply layer, and I'm also using that multiply layer to create some sort of imperfections on the skin and carving out the form a little bit more, making the shadow shapes clearer, making the shapes between the shadow shapes between the fingers clearer, and making the overall form read better. And I realize he's a little bit too contrasty, so I add a lighten layer to weaken the shadows, so the shadows are not super dark and super contrasty, so it looks like it's like more in the background, so there's more light between the guys. I'm really, right now I'm painting the air between the shadows of this giant dude and our eyes, so the shadows will not be super dark because there's like a lot of snow and it's a very heavy environment. I'm testing some brushes to because I got some reference, and reference is really good, especially at this stage of those tiny bushes. So I realized I really wanted to make those guys more like the real brushes. So I added some angles and some different kinds of design elements to it, reading from the reference, which really helps. And when I'm detailing those bushes, and when I'm detailing anything, to be honest, I try to not uh, weaken the angles that I had at the beginning. So I really enjoy having strong angles and very strong diagonals and straight lines. I really enjoy that, and I try not to break that when I'm rendering. One of the things that I do that weakens the most is rendering without any conscience of the forms and the directions I had before. Right now, I'm painting sort of like a tiny river to separate those guys and to make the background more emphasized. I'm adding with a soft brush some sort of dark gradient over there, so you can see that the snow looks like it's on top of the river, sort of like a tiny form shadow. And I'm using some um, variations of a tiny brush to make the river look like it's frozen, and it has some imperfections. I think that I like to think that realism is not on the amount of details you put on things, but how you use the imperfections correctly, how you use the information. I'm using the ellipse tool to make a tiny shield, because that's gonna help against that giant and this giant hand. And I added a little Sketchbook Pro logo as a shout out to Autodesk for letting me do this and letting me have the program and test it out. So product placement. And I know I spent a lot of time on the line drawing in the beginning, and it's a little bit boring, but I understand that that's gonna save 2 or 3 times the time I would spend actually fixing things on later stages of the painting. So I enjoy spending time on that part, and I know it's gonna save a lot of time. And you can see that the painting, if you go back to the video like 10 minutes ago, it didn't change that much composition wise because I solved that problem at the beginning. And I like solving one problem at a time when I'm painting. It's sort of like, and I like that analogy, a juggler. It's hard to juggle 10 things at once at the same time, but it's much easier to just juggle one problem, solve it, move to the next, solve it, move to the next. So my painting process is a lot like juggling. When I try to solve one problem and I focus my entire brain to that problem, because I'm not very smart. I just focus on one thing and try to solve it the best way I can, and I move to the next problem, and I move to the next problem. If I'm not able to solve the problem in a correct way, I just go back and try to solve it again. You can see I did that with the hand. I know that the hand would really bother me later and will really cause me problems later, and the line drawing would really cause problems later if I just started to just go crazy with the brush strokes. And it's much easier when you think it like that, because at this stage that I am right now, it just makes things much easier. I'm just focusing on making tiny planes and making the actual materials read nicely, and I'm not trying to solve any big problems or trying to fix anything, because I know I spent enough time doing that at the beginning stages of the painting, and that really helps me. And as I'm detailing, I keep the layers, and you can see I'm switching right now to see if I actually improved some areas, because sometimes I don't. Sometimes I weaken some areas and make the angles that I mentioned weird and weak. So I keep the layers so I can go back and erase some of the details I added if I think the details are bothering the actual read of the form and the planes. And adding some more details on the hand, which is a big focal point. I try not to add details everywhere. I have a specific strategy to adding details, is that I relate the amount of details to the importance of the specific part to the story I'm trying to tell, and to the focal point that I'm trying to guide the person who's looking at my image. So I don't add many details to the other hand, to the other arm, to the legs, because they are not very important. I want to imply them, but what I really want to show is the head, and especially the hand. Right now I'm focusing more on the hand, so I made everything darker, you can see, so it has a little bit less focus. And pretty much to this point, I stayed with that same brush, which I loved. And it's really cool because it really carves out the form nicely and really gives me nice angles. And I think at this stage, it helps to show people your image to see if it's working, the composition that you intended, and maybe receive some feedback from people. Story-wise, especially if they can understand the story, if they look at the places you want them to look. So I asked a friend, and he mentioned the sort of making the monster darker so it's more mysterious, and squinting your eyes really helps at this stage to see if the value structure is still working. So I try to zoom out and squint my eyes sometimes to see if the values are nice. And I selected a new brush to add some sort of like snow effect, some sort of like movement to the environment. I think it's really cool. Some of the movies I like a lot work with a lot of movement on the environments. So I'm adding some snow so the scene really feels alive and feels like it's a moment in time. I really try to think about that when I'm painting, about what's happening after this painting and what's happening before this painting. So sort of like it's a real world. And I'm adding a last glow effect to this, so it pops out the you can see that it adds a little bit more saturation and color. You saw that the beginning stages of the painting were not very saturated and not very contrasty, and as I go, I build up the contrast and I build up the saturation as well, because again, less things to worry about at each time, and now is the time to worry about finer details, saturation levels, how the contrast is working. Oh, and I used my own hand as reference for the hand of the blue dude. I forgot to mention that. And that really helps to figure it out things. And as we are approaching the final stages of this image, I just wanted to say some of the things that are important to me and to my process. The main one is that painting is a form of communication. I really consider that to be strong. So I really always try to say something with my images and try to see if the painting that I'm doing and the decisions I'm taking when I'm painting say something or not. The other thing is just I try to be a juggler. I try to solve one problem at a time. I try to not have too many things at once when I'm just focusing on one thing, tunnel vision. And finally, I try to have strong shapes at the beginning, and I try not to weaken those shapes by adding a lot of detail. So you can see that this is the final version of the image. I thank you so much for being here. I hope you guys had fun as well. I had a lot of fun doing this. I will try to do more paintings using Sketchbook Pro, and I'll try to learn more, because trying in your next painting is much better than crying from your last painting. Have a nice day, guys!